Today I'm going to walk you through the back end of the ITSM Service Desk system, and the way we're going to do that, I'm going to break it down in terms of the different roles, like I did in the very first video where I gave you the demo. At the moment, we're looking at the dashboard for the admin, and as mentioned previously, when they go to the hardware and inventory menu, they get the whole list of the assets, the inventory assets, and what they're able to do is click on register new device and enter in a new device. The main thing that I'm showing you today is what happens when they press sync inventory. So to give you an overview, you have SCCM, which captures all the information about the assets that is connected to the network of your company. Okay. Now, in terms of the real life example, I have a task scheduler that runs a PowerShell script that extracts two reports from SCCM. That's the inventory report and the software collection report. And we're going to go to inventory update. So this is the webhook that is triggered by the sync inventory button. And what happens here is from the SCCM report, which gets stored in the Google Drive location. It's downloaded, the CSV data is extracted, and then parallel to that, we've got here the Postgres node wherein it's getting the existing records. Step 3 here, analyze, compare data from SCCM and database, and this is what takes place here. And then moving along, based on the results of the comparison, it determines whether a new record needs to be updated on the database, a new record needs to be created in the database, and then a new record is updated, or a new record is updated in the database. After that, I have another workflow that is triggered, and this workflow is what captures the software asset management data. So this is the software asset management data collection workflow. This is it right here. Now this node is what gets triggered at the end of the inventory workflow that we just looked at. Now how this works is, again, you've got the trigger. The first part of this workflow, so if I come back here, you'll notice that the first part of the workflow is similar to the inventory workflow, where SCCM produces the report, stores the report in a Google Drive location. That report is then downloaded, the data is extracted from that actual report, and then this node here normalizes the data, so it arranges the data to make sure, and I've got it here, it matches the schemas and tables within the actual database. So that's the purpose of this node here. After the data normalization, we've got the ensure hardware exists, and this is the part where it actually determines, and I've got it here, it creates or updates hardware devices or their locations before attempting to link software deployments to it. Okay, for matching the software to catalog, all this node does is attempt to match the discovered software name and the actual publisher against what you have in your software catalog master list. So in terms of the software catalog master list, if we quickly jump ahead to the IT manager and we go to software, not this one, software and license. No, we don't go there. Sorry, system management, and you've got the software catalog. This is the catalog, so the catalog of all the actual applications and systems used within your organization. So this match software to catalog is ensuring that the software falls in line with the catalog that is within the actual business. So based on the results, if there's a match, what it does is apply that software to that particular hardware. If there isn't, then there is a log and a notification to go to the manager to take a further look as to why there is an application coming through the pipeline, which is not part of the software catalog itself. Maybe it's a thing wherein that manager needs to just add that new software that the business has got to start using within the catalog and then run it through again, and they should be all good. Okay, so let's go back to the IT admin. So that is the process in which how an IT admin actually updates their IT inventory and keeps the database live with current assets that's on the network within their business. Okay, now when the IT admin wants to run a software asset management collection report, they will do so by clicking this button here, and that triggers this web within the same workflow we've just been looking at. And it will follow that same process. So it will take a look to see if there is any reports produced by SCCM with regards to the software collection that is extracted, normalized, check hardware in terms of what hardware has this application installed on, matches the actual application against the software catalog that's already in the system, and then based on that, those results will take either one route or the other, whether it's matched or unmatched, which leaves an actual log log and a notification to management. Okay, so moving on. Next, we have the actual knowledge base, and I'm going to show you in terms of the automations that power this actual knowledge base for the IT admin. Now, as I've already mentioned before, the IT admin can create a new article. There isn't really any automation behind this. They put in the required information and they will save as draft. So if I just do test here and then do demo test down here, what else do we need? Let's just change this to something random, troubleshoot. Right, okay. So all the admin does is click save as draft. Now there is no automation behind this. All that happens here is that article, guide, etc. is then added to the database with the status of draft. Okay, so that will be their status. What happens is, and we're going to look at that next, is that the manager now has an additional document that it needs to review, which has some automations on the back end. Now, that is just one way of creating an article. Another way is when the IT admin goes down to AI Service Desk, and when they select the mode, they're either able to create a guide from a transcript, which is this here, and all they need to do is basically select the service, the category, the type of document, and then paste in the actual transcript or meeting notes, etc. Then they have generate knowledge article. Now, from pressing that button, what that does is it triggers the workflow within the transcripts to how-to guide n8n workflow. So it triggers this webhook here. The actual file is downloaded and we're using Minstrel, which model? Yep. So we're using the Minstrel OCR latest model to extract the text, and then we're utilizing AI to generate a guide from that actual transcript text, and then using AI to extract the title of the how-to guide from the results of the previous node. Once it's done that, the record in terms of the document is logged. Then it goes through this process where the actual output is converted into a HTML format. It is then organized in such a way wherein you've got the nice standard formatting in terms of title, the actual body of the message, etc. This HTTP request node, what this actually does is it creates a folder, and in that folder, it creates the file. Then the next node will search and find the location of that folder that was created by the HTTP request node, and then the file that needs to be updated within that folder is then updated. Another scenario in which an IT admin could contribute to the knowledge base is by just uploading the raw document itself, whether it's a Word document, a PDF, or anything like that. They just drag and drop in the document they want to be turned into a guide. Now, if our IT admin has already created an actual and it's ready to be reviewed, they will simply go to the upload documents to knowledge base, drop in the file that they've created. I'm just using this PDF as an example, and then they select the service and category that the guide relates to. Then they have the option of adding any additional notes the reviewer is going to see. Once they're happy, they will then select ingest documents, and by pressing that button, it triggers the following workflow. So it triggers this webhook, which basically takes the file, downloads it. The text is extracted using Minstrel OCR, and then we're using AI to extract the title of the file and the body of the file. Then that information goes to this code node, which gives each document a unique actual batch number. Information continues by the service index. So if I go here, manager, or actually let's stay where we are. So what it's doing is, so you got the fetch service index. It's fetching all the services in our database, right? So all these services. So it's got to get that, format that information nicely. This merge node also picks up information from extracted text as well as the batch number, and then is now sent to this process data AI node, or shall I say LLM chain. Now, what takes place in here is that it's got the information, so the title and the body of the actual PDF, and it's going to work out whether or not it relates to any of the services in the services index. Now, one thing to note here is that you would see that I'm using this step here for the fetching of the services index instead of getting AI to go and search for the actual service index. Instead, I am feeding the AI what is in the services table. This prevents any form of mistakes by AI. The instructions of this node that are given to AI is that they are a knowledge-based classification agent. So what they're responsible for is analyzing the document text and determine the correct service, parent service, category for the knowledge-based system. Now, with the information extractor node, what this does is it now takes the scoring results from the previous nodes and formats it in a way that can now be logged and added to the database. So if I just open this node up, the previous node, after looking at the data and matching it against the indexes, it will come up with a confidence score. It will come up with a category code. It will come up with a service acronym, detect any keywords, ambiguity flags, and you've got the service item code. So these are the information that it would extract from the results taken from this node here, where it is processing the data from the PDF that was submitted against the services and categories index. Now, with that information from the information extractor, it's now then merged with the generated batch number and given over to the next. It goes to this Postgres node, and what this Postgres node does is to sync the services from the knowledge base index that is in the database against the services index that the AI model has given the document that was submitted. Now, because AI is prohibited from writing to the database, okay, so it cannot add any new services code or any new categories. If the service and the categories that was allocated to the document does not match what is in the database, it will trigger an error, and this error will then trigger an email that will get sent to the service desk manager to highlight that there was a document that was submitted and it doesn't fit any of the categories. So that manager needs to review the document, see if basically the document's even relevant for the knowledge base, and if so, maybe they need to look at the services index and categories. No, maybe it'll be more of the services and the sub-services index to see if something needs to be added in. Okay. Now, if the services knowledge base service index matches the service index that the AI model has given it, then it's a success. All this node does is based on the scoring system that the AI model has given to the document. If the score is greater than 0, that means that the document needs to be reviewed and a notification is then sent to the manager. If it's fine, it falls under the false, and it will go ahead and update the daily throughput metrics for the auditing purposes. Once that process is complete, that actual submitted PDF is now in the database with the tag waiting to be reviewed by the manager. Right, now let's look at the manager's role and the automations that makes the manager role work for this system. So for the managers, they get their standard dashboard, but the key things they're able to do, as I've mentioned before in the previous video, is add services, add categories. Now there's no automations behind this, as this is recorded directly on the database. Adding software catalog is also just directly added to the database. But when it comes to the approval queue, this is where the manager gets a overview of all the documents that's been submitted, pending review, submitted, those that he or she has requested changes to, approved documentation as well as rejected ones. Now, documents that need to be reviewed, as you can see here, pending review, they have the option to, of course, view it, but where the automations are concerned, they have the power to approve, request changes, and reject. Now, if the manager, he or she, clicks approve, what that does is trigger this webhook here, goes to the switch node, which has approve, reject, changes, and archive. So it'll go up the approve route. And with this node, what this node does is change the status of that document to published. But that's not the only thing. The markdown node that takes the text and turns it into a HTML. You've got these 3 nodes here, and what they do is turn the content taken from the database of that published guide and turns it into a nice HTML format. Then you've got this HTTP request node, which now creates a folder in Google Drive and then creates the file within that folder within Google Drive. And then the database is updated with that Google Doc ID that was just created in Google Drive. That creation of the file is logged back into the database, right? So once again, that's what happens when a manager sees a submitted guide, reviews it, and approves it. Now, if that manager rejects it, it's going to take the rejected route, and pretty much the status of that document is going to be changed to rejected, and that's it. Okay, so that was the approve and the reject. Next, let's look at the request changes. Now, when a manager requests changes, they will add some notes. I've just put random stuff here, and the status of the actual document is changed. Now that is changed on the database, and then what that looks like for the IT admin that submitted it is that they would see the how-to guide, for example, how-to guide test that we submitted, that he or she submitted. They will see the manager's notes. They will click edit, make whatever changes they need to, and then resubmit. Now, when they click resubmit, what happens is that it triggers off this hook node here. And then next you have this validate and prepare data node. And all this does is make sure that the data that comes through from the webhook has got the correct document ID, the email address from the person that's submitting it or resubmitting the document is correct, and there's a document title, and the title is within a certain length. So this is the kind of, call it the validation type node, okay? And then you have what I like to call is the rate limits. So it tells me, or tells the system, how many times that this person's already made a request within the last hour or 24 hours and so forth. And then you've got the evaluate rate limit. So it takes the response from this node and then it makes a decision based on its limits to say, okay, it's 20 requests per hour or 100 requests per day and so forth. Then that response or that answer in terms of the value rate limit is then logged into the system. Now you have the merge rate limit node. Okay, so after the log rate limit node does its stuff, which is basically adding a timestamp that's logged into the system. Now this merge rate limit data just takes the original request and the actual logged information with regards to the rate limit and just packages it up nicely to move forward into the next node, which is here, and that is the verify document ownership. Now all this node does is asks the database, does this document actually exist? And if it doesn't already exist in the database, then it fails the authorization gate and a notification gets sent to the individual that submitted the form. Now, if it does exist, the document is updated. Now, once the system has updated the actual document successfully in terms of changing the status to pending review, this node here will then assign a reviewer. So if there's more than one manager or an assigned person that reviews submitted documentation, it will assign one. Then it will generate its audit log, update the audit log, and then send a notification to the actual manager that has been assigned to review the submitted document. Now, if in any case, for whatever reason, the document status cannot be changed to pending review, it will fail the update success check. The document is then queried in terms of getting that data of the document that has been submitted. Now, remember, to get to this stage, the original document exists because it passed this authorization gate. So the document information is queried in this, and then an actual incident record is created for the failure of this document, and then an email notification goes out to the actual admin that submitted the document. That is the process in terms of what happens when an admin, a knowledge-based document that the manager requested changes to. Okay, so back to the IT manager and the knowledge base. The other function that the manager has with regards to the knowledge base is any old documents that published that is outdated, they will click archive. They'll get a notification saying, okay, this will be moved to archive. They'll click OK. And now that document's archived. If we come here, we can see that it's archived. And if we come out of this, we go back. Yes, leave without saving. We go to the action handler automation. What took place is this webhook was triggered, the switch then picks up it's an archive, and it will go down this. The status of that document is changed to archived, and there is a designated Google Drive folder for archived documents, and that document is moved into that location. Now, I mentioned it a moment ago that when an actual document is approved, not only is the status changed to published, there is also an Google document created for that guide itself, and it's saved in Google Drive. Now, when that said document is now outdated, as well as the status being changed on the database, that file is moved out of the actual published Google Drive folder and moved to the archived Google Drive folder. Okay, so that's the functionality that the manager has with regards to the knowledge base. Let's move on to the software and licenses. Now, the only real automation back here would be to run the SAM collection. That is similar to what the IT admin can do. So if I go to the IT admin software licenses, you could see here run the SAM collection, and I've showed you that automation already. Outside of that, everything else that the manager could do with regards to software is is view the reports and then add any software which doesn't trigger automation. What this does is update the database itself. All right, let's move on to the hardware. Now, just like the admins, the managers could add new devices. This doesn't trigger an automation. What this does is adds the information to the Postgres database. But just like the IT admins, they're able to initiate the sync automation, which marries up the SCCM reports with what's information's in the database and then updates the database with any of the missing information that is captured in SCCM. All right, that is the same thing that the IT admin can do themselves as well. Then we've got the system management. Now, again, adding a service and adding a category is just updating the database. There is no workflow behind it. In this section, they are able to see the same list of needing to be approved or submitted documentation, which is the same view as in the all documents section. And then they have this software catalog, which again, no real automation. This action here, when submitted, updates the database itself. And that's the manager. Now we're at the service delivery manager and the auditor. What both of them see is mainly reports. However, with the service delivery manager, he has the view that the IT admin and the manager has with regards to the inventory. So he has an overview, he's able to add a new device, as well as sync the inventory with SCCM to display the live data. As well as that, has an overview of the software and licenses, which also includes the compliance and what users is assigned to what application. And again, they are also, just like the manager, able to run the software asset management collection. However, when it comes to the auditor only sees reports. Okay, they want to see reports of compliance, and so that's what all they've got access to. Service delivery manager has these four main metrics that he or she would be looking at with regards to the health monitor, the continual service improvement metrics, the software asset management compliance snapshot, and obviously the knowledge base log that we've looked at already. The auditor is also able to see, with regards to the SOC 2 compliance, the CAB change register in terms of change requests, etc. Now, the key thing to note here is that these reports that you're actually looking is not necessarily generated via an automation in the background. This is specific information that's captured within the database and is presented in front of the actual auditor. However, with that said, if I show you, so if I just go to okay, now with that said, we have three automations which also produces actual notifications and documentation. For example, the continual service improvement metric produces, this automation actually produces a report. Now this report is triggered once every day at 9 a.m. Now what takes place here is that at 9 a.m. this node here that says calculate metrics, what it actually does is it queries the documents table, and it's querying the documents table to get four knowledge management KPIs. It's the AI classification accuracy, the average document review time, the average revised rate, and the document ingestion throughput. Now, if I go back to the dashboard and we go to the CSI metrics, you will notice that it's referred, these are the metrics, the categories, the target that each metric is actually meant to be achieving as a minimum, and the actual in terms of where the business actually is. And obviously that would reflect in it showing as being compliant or not compliant, or on target or not on target. Now, again, like I said, this information there is not generated by the automation. What the automation does is provide the service delivery manager and other management an actual report daily with regards to the service that the service desk is providing. Now, once this node queries the documents table and gets that information with regards to those four metrics that I just mentioned, this code node here formats that information so that it's in a nice readable position for AI, in this case it's Google Gemini, to produce a report. And then Gemini uses this node here to extract the title and the description from the report. And then this process here that you may have, if you remember, you've seen this in the action handler workflow, where these four nodes here turns the information, the data, from Markdown to a HTML. This process just formats it, and this final node here puts it in a Google Drive folder and places the document inside. there's a log of that activity, or that's an option to have a log of the documents that's been produced. But definitely there's a notification that goes off to the service delivery manager to highlight the report, and has the attachment of the actual physical report they could take away and present to other management or leadership team. All right. So again, this automation is not necessarily an automation that helps populate the front end. The front end is displaying the information that's actually in the database itself. This automation is to produce reports for the service delivery manager, excuse me. The next one is the monthly software asset management compliance snapshot. All right. So this automation is scheduled for once a month, in this case at midnight. And then when that's triggered, this node goes through the whole list of different software that's in the database. And then this node here checks its compliance. Okay, so with regards to whether it's compliant or not compliant. Next, you got this code node here, which is that, and what it does is it will take the information that's come from these two nodes here, so in terms of the list of software, and then the results based on which software is actually compliant, and this node will actually clean up that information with to listing out all the compliant software and all the non-compliant software, and then a message that information is then sent to the service delivery manager, which he or she gets a report once a month. So if we go back, finally we've got the health monitor, and the health monitor on the front end. So if we go back to the compliance report and we check the health monitor, what the health monitor does is checks to make sure that all the automations are actually running the way they're supposed to. So once you've set up your database by following the instructions provided within the Governance Academy, and you've set up your automations, so you've linked the nodes with your credentials to your Supabase, the only thing that you would need to do is just link in your front end HTML that you also get to your Supabase database. And all you need to do is open up the HTML. The webhooks are already in place. You just need to link the HTML to Supabase and link it to your n8n URL. So, you know, if you've got it set up on a VPS server, your public URL, you just paste that in here, save it, and now you're good to go. So with all that said and done, hopefully you've got a clear understanding in terms of what your capabilities are. If you was actually to focus in your business, look at your infrastructure, look at the available tools that's out there now in the market, and see what you could actually achieve without the need of spending hundreds of thousands a month, a year rather, with regards to a SaaS platform. Really, a SaaS platform is meant to complement your in-house foundation rather than you building your foundation on licensed software. But anyway, that's it for this video. Next, we're going to be talking about, like I said, the cab change register, which is more of a, as well as ISO IEC 27001 standard, it also complies with the SOC 2 standard as well, which is, I believe, is more of a US standard in terms of having an audit trail with regards to change management. So I will see you in the next one.